Hello, welcome to Win Some Lose More. I'm Dieter, this is my brother Rick, and you join us for the final installment of our top 100 games of all time. This is number 10 to number 1, whoop whoop, raise the roof. We're doing it slightly different this time, only insofar as I have a very precarious stack of box lids in front of me. That could go down at any moment. We've already spoken about a few dexterity games that we like, so let's see how we are at them with these unstacking that we're going to be doing. Now,
that's a great idea for a game. Top 100 games, a dexterity game.
Oh gosh, and you have to. No, never mind. I think I know all of yours.
I think I know all of yours.
Oh, really? Interesting. Okay, yeah. I don't think you know the order. You knew it.
No.
Recently-ish, but it's had a bit of an overhaul. Mm-hmm. So we'll see how we go.
I think there's one game I've just on the last couple of days when we've not been doing this. I went, that hasn't turned up. Wow.
I know which one that is. That's my number 6.
Is it? Okay, I'll see if I was right.
I think you are.
Okay.
But I've said we've taken a bit longer on other ones, so we'll try and go quicker. Shush. Number 10 of all time. What garbage is it?
Oh, it's not garbage at all. It's Captain Sonar.
Not garbage.
And to be honest, I look like I'm playing the part with my headphones on. I look amazing. You can see yourself reflected. What a shiny box. Who knew? Anyway, Captain Sonar, the most fun you can have with a dry white marker. Honestly, this game is, you have to play it to understand how good it is. I had Shut Up and Sit Down had done a great review. I was sold on it, and then you play it, and oh my goodness, it works. I said this is a 6 to 8 player game. It's not worth playing with lower player counts, and it is real-time battleships, 3 versus 3 or 4 versus 4. You sit either side of a table, and you take on the role of the captain, the first mate, the engineer, and the sound operative, the radio operative. And everyone just has this mini game that they're playing with a dry white marker. The captain's drawing a route around some rocky plains in a submarine. The first mate is charging up the systems as he does so. The engineer is stopping the engine braking as he does so. And oh man, it just interacts so well. And then on the far end, I've never seen a game where it says you have to sit in specific places because of the way you interact with one another. It's incredible. Initially, you think the first mate, that's kind of a rubbish role, but actually it's the voice between the captain and the engineer guy who's shouting. It's like, you can't go any more north because you've broken the engine that way. It's outstanding. It is, I guess people would call it a one-off game. You've only played it once, and I know it rates highly for you. It's a special event game. You do need 6 to 8 players, but if you can, wow. You'll notice throughout my list, there are games that I just love, but there are also games that are the best of its type. This is the best party game, team game, social deduction game that I've ever played, and it's fantastic.
My number 10. So in previous lists, I've said, I'm kind of bored and over with worker placement because I've played so many, or I've got so many. There are 3 in my top 10 worker placement games, and 2 that could be argued as worker placement, but I think you're wrong.
I haven't said anything.
Number 10, Tardy. Fantastic. Wow. This is the one that kind of is always on the threshold. It dips in and out. I'm just going to toss it over there. Yes. And exactly what you said when you mentioned it a couple of lists ago, that axis mechanism is incredible. That you're not only thinking about where do I place on the outside to get what I want, but actually try and think of 4 or 5 places that you want, so that when you're taking in turn, actually it's the center that's the most important bit. And then I do have, actually I'll put this off the shelf now, the expansion, which is kind of guts the game. So you keep half of the components, guts the core cards, gets a whole new set, and suddenly has this extra stuff going on. I couldn't say which is better or worse. They are distinct experiences, although clearly the same engine, the same mechanism going on. It's the same price as the game, but both of those are 14, 15 pounds. So it's not, that's the price of an expansion. So that for the base game, amazing. If you've played it 20 times and go, I want some variation, 15 pounds again, done. So good, super dry. You'll notice a lack of theme in my list compared to Rick's. Number 10, Targi, so good.
Yeah. And 45 for me, and none of that has to do with design. Some of it has to do with theme and just sort of feel and playtime, but undeniably outstanding design. And we could just repeat that on all of these because they are just fantastic. Now, number 9, one you haven't played, Raiders of the North Sea. Now, this is from the same stable as the Architects of the West Kingdom, Paladins of the West Kingdom, Viscounts of the West Kingdom that we've talked about before, but this is the North Sea range, which was a trilogy before the West Kingdom range. And it has to be said, this seems to be the only one with any plaudits. I haven't played the other two, but this is the one that everyone says, yeah, this is a good one. I initially got it when we were moving to the North Sea, to Newcastle. I was like, I should probably give it a go. Oh my goodness. Deets talked about worker placement, and what you get when you've played a lot of games is you want worker placement because it's an interesting mechanism, because it takes something from your opponent and gives you something, because it is resource management. How can I best use what I have at the moment? But you play them so much, you want something that twists it, and Targi is a great example of that. I put someone here and I put someone here, and then I get to put someone there as well. Okay, on this one, wow. I put a worker down and I pull a worker off somewhere else. In the whole game, you will only ever have one worker at a time. So I might put someone one place and take someone from another, and you take both of those actions in order. That is so simple to play, to teach, to get your head around. And there are so many choices, because where do I go? Okay, there's 3 other things I can pull off. But what order do I want to do things in? I probably should save that for later. Oh, but wait, someone else has now pulled that off, so that space isn't available to me unless I put my worker on it. And then and that's just the bottom bit of the board. That's just where you, your village, where you're preparing to go on raids. You then go on raids across the North Sea, and we've named the places Jarrow and Tynemouth and Newcastle and Gateshead because they look like those places on the map. And historically, that's accurate. The Vikings came over and sacked my part of the world. And then when you do that, your workers level up. And so they suddenly become more powerful workers. But there's a kind of payoff as well, because they're not so good at the menial jobs. Maybe because I'm a Viking lord. Why would I just go hunting for resources? There's so much theme in here. The Miko's art is fantastic. I know this is not the last time that Garfield's going to turn up on this list. But it is my favorite of all their games. And I really struggle to say that because it doesn't quite have the crunchiness of Paladins. It doesn't quite have the theme of Architects, but it has everything going for it. And I just love playing it. It's fab.
I was desperately listening throughout whilst my stack was slowly falling apart. So I had to rescue it a couple of times. But this is one I'd be super excited to play.
You'll love it. You'll love it.
My number 9, you've said before, Small World. Again, just fantastic. I think for me, it's in my top 10 for sentimental reasons.
Yep.
It's, as I claim from my memory, that it's the first modern game I played.
Yep, we played it on my puff in our old front room.
Yes. My pronunciation would be poof, but that's okay. Footstool, large footstool.
Yeah.
Yes. I don't think it's as good at 2 as the other player counts.
Okay.
I think it's good at 2. I think it's great at every other player count.
Sure. Okay.
I just love the nonsense. The combination, smashing these names together is just hilarious. And the other reason it's up here for me, I've talked about before, I'm not a huge fan of area control, and I was even a staunch, whatever the opposite of advocate is, against area control. even after having played this game and loving this game, because this feels so different to me, because it's wave after wave after wave rather than long-term build, what have you. You're done with your race after about 2 or 3 turns maximum. So you'll get through 2, 3, 4, depending on how your planning goes.
Yeah.
Different combinations throughout the game. So you'll completely cover the board and be like, wow, I did an amazing job. And then maybe you'll get another turn of feeling amazing. And then you'll put them into decline and just lose ground. Okay, I'm going to get this combination and boom, here I come again. And that's just excellent fun.
Yeah.
And we played it at 6, even though you're not supposed to.
Yeah, on a 5-player board.
It was excellent fun.
It worked. Yeah.
It didn't matter that it was tight. It was so chaotic that I don't tend to like chaotic games, but it's just fun here. So Small World, so good.
So good. Cannot fight you. Okay, moving on. Number 8. Rude.
Yep.
Oh, this is good. This is good. Okay, more fighting, more caveating. I don't like war games. It's a war game. I don't really care for generic fantasy. It's generic fantasy, albeit, by the way, Kyle Ferrin, we've mentioned him lots of times, but look at this art. Look at this art.
It is weirdly both specific and generic all at the same time. Like, they've definitely created their own world, but it doesn't mean anything.
This is what you call the Quentin Blake sort of style, wasn't it?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, and I totally get that. But this game, wow. I mean, I've got so excited, I've gone out of focus. But 4 different factions, and that's just the base game. You know, I haven't got any of the expansions, and wow, am I ever going to do that? Who knows? Every single one plays entirely differently. Yes, they're all shooting for 30 points, but they all do it entirely different ways. The cat isn't an engine builder, you know, placement on the board. The birds, you said you like them the best at the moment?
Currently, yeah.
Me too. And they're programming games, and we both hate programming games. How do they do it? It's because it intentionally busts. It intentionally blows it up. It's like, we know that programming games don't work, so here's the point, because the birds race ahead and then get pulled back by their own petard.
Interestingly, it's the Small World mentality.
Yes.
You push,
boom and bust,
knowing you're going to go back and then go again. Interesting. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah. The Woodland Alliance, who are losing. Oh, they won. Oh, where did they come from? And then the vagabond wandering around and doing things. Do you know the thing I love about this? This is in the world of board gaming, a fairly small box. Okay, and actually, but we've got the insert in there, not that full. There is a board, a deck of cards, and 2-ish very small decks of cards. You know, for the birds, some wooden tokens, and 2 dice. But the design, wow. This shot to my number 1 when I first played it, and it immediately fell down again, because I just don't play it as much as I'd like to, because it doesn't really work in anything. It just about works in 3. It doesn't work in 2. It's like Small World's older brother, is how I describe it. It's like Small World grew up and became amazing, but you do have to have the right group to play it with.
My number 8 is the second worker placement on the list, but again,
worker placement.
Underwater Cities.
Oh, I want to play it. I want to play it so much.
It doesn't feel like a worker placement, and that's partly why it's so good. Yes, it's got the worker placement, but every time you place a worker, which is just a strip of cardboard, it's not a worker at all. I don't even know what it's supposed to be thematically. You also play a card. You have to either discard a card or play a card. And playing a card, you have to match the color of the space that you've put your worker on. And so really, it's an action selection game with your hand. If I find it's helpful to think this way, because it's not the bonus. You're kind of wasting your turn if you don't get the thing. But sometimes you have to waste your turn because you just need that one thing, or you need to stop the other person. And then this has this massive tableau building element of all the normal stuff, one-time bonuses, ongoing bonuses, end-game scoring stuff. Now, on paper, I didn't get this for a while, because there are a few things that I looked at and went, I'm not going to like this, because production is okay. it's not bad, but compared to Root, compared to some of the other games we're talking about, it's a bit thin and naff.
Yeah.
Which is okay. It's a brand new publisher. So Vladimir Suki, the guy that did Last Will I spoke about, he made this company Delicious Games, and so they published it. So it's cool. It's got a spatial kind of building board where you're building domes and roads and stuff, and it's like, oh, that's weird. And it's a worker placement an underwater city, of course, and it's worker placement. And it's this, table hog with all this giant tableau. So there was all this stuff that I was like, and it was always just that little bit more complex, according to everybody, than I am comfortable with the learning curve. But I did get it again. It was probably on sale or something. And oh my goodness,
I want to play it so much.
You will love this. It has the feeling of what I think is your number one. One or two, number one. I'm calling it. It has that feel with the tableau building. It really, really does. And yet for me, has a more interesting board interaction because you have to think about it. You can't forget about it, which you'll talk about. But so good. The expansion ups the production. It comes with better boards and whatnot. But again, same price as the game. For a £15 game, that's great. For a £40, £50 game,
yeah, it's a lot.
Not so good.
Yeah.
But oh my goodness, I play this just on my own. You're supposed to just beat 100. I hate beat your own score, but I'll sit and play it. And I'll never beat 100 because I suck at it. It's so satisfying.
My number 7, and I have to say at this point, I only noticed when we got to 77 what I'd done. Because 77 was Seven Wonders. 7 is Seven Wonders Duel, which is the best version of Seven Wonders by a country mile. I first played this game and said, I wish Seven Wonders was a multiplayer version of this. And for some reason, it's not. I'm going to quote you because I often do, your Why I Like video of Seven Wonders Duel. You said, and I've said this to a number of people, it's like The Lion King. Because you said, sometimes someone's like, do you want to watch The Lion King? And I don't really want to watch The Lion King. It's just The Lion King, isn't it? And they sit down and watch it and go, wow, that's a great film, top to bottom. It's a great analogy because Seven Wonders Duel, I don't super care about the theme. I guess it's fine. And I sit down and I play it and I get to the end of it and go, that is a really, really good game. And again, my top 10 list, lots of the best of each type. This is the best 2-player game I have ever played.
My number 7 doesn't have a 7 in its name because I have self-respect.
It was a mistake. It was honestly a mistake.
I'm not going to chuck a lid around because there is no lid. This is Onitama, where the whole thing is a fold out thing. Now, this was down in your 90s, I think.
Yeah, I have only played it on the app.
And when I had only played it on the app, I too was like, that's clever, that's good, cool, done. The physical, tactile experience, I cannot explain it. It's the same game, but seeing the 5 move cards come out and going, oh, how do we use these? As opposed to the computer just going, boop, there's all the stuff, figure it out.
Yeah.
There's something about them coming out, the piece, I'm going to have to.
I don't think that's a surprise though, because you think about something like chess, okay?
Yeah.
Chess has been around for so long. Everyone knows how to play it. You can play it on the computer. You can try and, get the computer to beat you up on it. Do you know what the best thing about chess is? Having a beautiful chess set. Having a piece that is interactive, made of marble, made of wood, whatever it is. Chess is beautiful. And that is a roll mat.
This is a neoprene mat. Big chunky pieces. This as a tactile experience. And as you say then, the actual kind of looking your opponent in the eye, outwitting them thing. This is my favorite abstract game.
Okay, my number 6 is what I think is going to be our only crossover.
Ooh, number 6.
Number 6, is that right? So we're going to come back to that later.
Sure, let's do that. Okay, then. What do you think my number 6 is? Because I think this is the one you think that I know. Whatever.
I think yours is The Crew. No way! I still haven't played it.
Again, semi-inexplicable, which is unhelpful for a video where we're explaining things.
I mean, it did win Kennerspiel this year.
It did win Kennerspiel this year, and it was about £10 when I bought it. So I went, all right, fine. It topped up an order to get free shipping. I was like, I'll give it a go. Oh my goodness. This is a cooperative trick-taking game. If you know trick-taking games, they shouldn't be cooperative.
No.
That makes no sense. And yet, the core mechanic is everybody plays a card, highest card wins. That's it. But what it introduces, oh boy.
It's cringe.
It's fine. It's just cardboard hitting each
Mine are piling up nicely.
I started with a nice pile, but it's going down. Yeah. It tells you before the game starts, you deal out, well, we'll come to that in a minute, but you deal out cards that tell you have to win the trick that contains the yellow 2. Don't win with the yellow 2. You have to win the trick. Somebody has to play it, and you need to win that trick for you to complete that mission. And in the book, that's kind of the core concept. But then the book comes with 50 scenarios, 50 variations of that game, where you each have to get a different mission for this to work. And then it tells you what order you have to get them in, or this one has to be the last one, but the others can be, or you have to win 4 tricks with a 1. Which is like almost impossible.
Really hard.
You have to get till late in the game where you could play offsuit to even do this kind of thing. Mental stuff. But I've taught it to so many groups. And like Fuse, I guess, this would be number 3 of the games that I would take anywhere. And have and do, because it's so small. It's just 2 decks of cards. That's it. And people so far have just loved... I do about missions 3 to 6 for new people to go, here's the core game, and here's let's make it a little bit harder and whatnot. And people play the first one, whether they've played trick taking or not. It takes them that first game to go, I see, I need to do that. And then we play again, and then we play again and again and again and again, and it's so flipping good. And the 2-player dummy player is human controlled, which is amazing. You lay out 7 cards face down, 7 cards face up on top of those face down cards. So you get some of their information. Normally all the information is secret, but you, whoever's the leader, gets to choose their card and the Jarvis, I think they're called, the fake player. And it just works so well because again, it becomes a choice. That's what lacks in some of the games that are lower down the list that are here in the top 10. Every design thing makes it a player choice, and you go, I feel smart, or I want to do that again and do it better. Whatever it is, it just makes it compulsive. So cheap, so good. There's a sequel coming soon, The Crew.
I have given this as birthday gifts to 2 people in my church this term. Still not played it because as lockdown has happened quite a lot, I was like, here's 50 games you can work through. And it's gone down very well. So there you go. All right, my number 5, I don't think made your top 100. I mean, we've still got 5 to go, so we'll see.
I am actually glad that this is your number 5, because my number 5 is probably my equivalent pick, which we'll come to in a minute.
Fine. This is Power Grid. Why don't you like Power Grid?
I have an unfair opinion of it.
Okay, yeah.
I've only played once. It took 3 hours.
My baby was interrupting.
She liked eating cards. It felt, because it was earlier into my experience of modern gaming. Okay. It felt like, as Root is to Small World, Power Grid to me felt like Monopoly.
Yes. Okay.
Because it's economic, because it's buying, because it's building houses, which again I'll come to in a minute. Yeah. It felt boring, whether it was or not. It felt boring. Yeah. And I think time away, coming back into it now with types of games I like, I assume I would like it more.
Yes.
Yeah, that's my current thinking.
Good. And I wanted you to say that because I actually agree with about 90% of that, but come away with a different feeling. It does remind me of Monopoly. It does remind me of it because there are little wooden houses, because you are using paper money, because it's an economic game, because there's auctions. And I have fond memories of Monopoly. Your viewers will need, this is embarrassing, I had over 50 Monopoly sets, did I not?
I mean, that's hardly embarrassing given we're talking about games behind. I've got a stack of games. You've got
50 of the same game.
But we're collectors. That's our compulsion.
I know. Still not good. But we've played at least 50 games of Monopoly then.
Yeah.
Well, there was one I never played, but that's okay.
Batman and Robin.
That's the one. It was horrible. But, you know, we've played a lot of Monopoly. So I have fond memories of that. But Monopoly is a game that has well since been left in the past in terms of game design. Power Grid is actually, compared to a lot of what we're talking about, quite an old game, you know, early noughties, about 2003, but it works. And it makes sense of the auction system. There's you basically in Power Grid, you are trying to power sections of either Germany or America, depending on which side of the board you play. And you start by getting some power stations. And you could get coal or oil or nuclear or one that does recycling or a wind farm. And they are different levels of effectiveness. But then, apart from the wind farm, which is powered by the wind, you then have to buy resources on an ever-changing track of resources. So like, oh, well, I'll get a coal power plant because coal is cheap to buy, and then you buy up all the coal and then it doesn't replenish because, hey, fossil fuels. But you know, this recyclable material and the uranium keeps becoming cheaper, but the uranium plants and the recycling plants, they're very expensive. I'll just get a wind farm. Oh, that's not very effective, is it? Okay. And you can get up to 3 of these, and you start with very simple ones, and then slowly you start binning them and getting the more expensive ones, and there's ebb and flow of the game. And there's 3 different phases. So initially, just one person can power each city, and then slowly as the game goes on, the monopoly doesn't break. There's just some brilliant design touches. Friedman and Fries absolutely smashed it out of the park because you've got, you know, the 8 lowest power plants available at the beginning, and then you draw just the top of the deck, which could be anywhere from then 9 to 50. Those numbers aren't quite right, but it's okay. But then at the end of the round, you take the highest number one and put it at the bottom of the deck. So actually, even though the higher number ones are coming up, you won't have access to them until later. So there's still randomization, but there's still a perfect swell to the game and perfect progression to it. It's very well designed. I know that some people don't really care for this art and find it a bit dull. I actually find it quite evocative. I find it kind of like, you know, 1930s propaganda, this sort of like you bringing electricity to the 20th century, that kind of look. I like it. I like the feel. There's a couple of things in there I'm not so keen on. The board, it's a bit cluttered for me, but I get it, and I really enjoy this one, and I know it's not for everyone, but I would always happily play it. Interestingly, it's only really one that works at 3 to 6, which is a great range. You don't get many Euros you can play at 6 quite happily, apart from what's next. But yeah, so you can't play it in 2. That's probably its only downer. But yeah, number 5, Power Grid.
Well, my number 5 is kind of my classic pick. In terms of feel, in terms of moving around the board, building houses, all the stuff you've just spoken about, but much less pretty. This is Concordia, which isn't cast as a Burgundy bad, but as compared to Power Grid, boring artwork. This is kind of Century Spice Road's big brother. So that core card play of Century Spice Road, if you've got your hand of actions, you play them and then you pick them all up and you add cards. That is same here. But these are set actions. Everyone has the same to begin with. And there's a card to pick up and you get a bonus for depending on how many you've played before that moment and whatnot. But then there's a card row to buy new cards. So it's got that slight deck building element, except it's not a deck. It all goes into your hand. So it's an action building, I don't know. But then it's all set on this big map of either Central Europe, or Italy in the 2 to 3 player version, but then there's loads of expansion maps, just like Power Grid. There's all these other places you can do it on. But let's say just the Central Europe, the Roman Empire, essentially, it's when it's set. I know the Roman Empire lasted for hundreds of years, but just pick one of them. Yeah. And you're spreading around the board and building settlements, and you have land characters that move around on land, and you have a couple of boats that move around on the sea, and moving to these different places to build settlements to be able to gain access to their resources. And there's a little map board which allows you to just trigger all the places that you control to get resources in an area. There's a market where you do the economy stuff and you trade to get the right resources to be able to build stuff, to be able to buy stuff, to be able to trade stuff, to be able to do all the Euro stuff. But then the scoring system is fascinating. Each card type, each action type that you get is attributed to in this case, Roman god, but a scoring type. Either how many of the regions do you have houses in, how many resources, how many different resources do you have settlements on, all this stuff. How many workers did you build, because you gain new colonists onto the board if you pay for it and whatnot. And so not only are you building your hand of actions, but you're building your hand of scoring potential. And so that combination of everything is about the cards in your hand, but they only matter if you do everything on the board, but you only get to do everything on the board based on how you've built the hand of cards. It's just this fascinating push and pull. It feels classic. It really does. It's a little old. It's a little slow. It's not slow. That's a lie. It's a little longer. This is like 90 to 2 hours, a kind of length rather than the 60 to 90 I typically go for. But I've played this so much with my group. It comes out so often, even at 5 player. It's again, that's where the 2 hour mark kind of comes in, but it works at 5, it works at 4, it works at 3, it works at 2. It's not, again, I'd say Small World, it's not as good at 2, but it's really good at 2, and it's great at every other count.
Sure.
It's just lovely. So this is Matt Gertz that you'd mentioned with Hamburgen. This is not a Rondel game. This is just a pure spread out, conquer, do economy, Euro stuff, but so satisfying for what it is. Concordia number 5.
So we talked a lot about worker placement games so far, and we talked about how we like a bit of a twist. And actually, this one hasn't got so much of a twist. It's pretty much just a straight worker placement game, and it is Viticulture. Now you'll note this is the Essential Edition. It was originally a Kickstarter from Stonemaier Games. It needed some tweaking, it needed some repairing. So the Essential version is what I have. But I also have the Tuscany Expansion Edition, Essential Edition, Expansion Edition, and another one from that replaces some of the cards. I've got a lot for it. This is a straight up worker placement game in which you are making wine, which means you grow grapes and you harvest grapes and then you crush grapes and you turn them into wine and then you sell them to people who want wine. Fairly standard thoroughfare, but it happens over a year. Spring, summer, autumn, winter. Now, depending if you have viticulture or if you have it with the Tuscany expansion, spring and autumn have more or less going on. Like I say, I have Tuscany, and I always play with Tuscany because it means that in each section you have a proper section of the game. And you have, at the beginning, just 3 workers who can work at one point throughout the year. I don't know, they're lazy or whatever. They just, I will only work for 25% of the year. Sorry, bye-bye. And then they don't work again. So you have to choose, well, if I use this guy to plant some grapes, he's not going to be able to pick grapes later on. Okay, well, I've got very little to work on. But you get to the end of the year, you get them all back, and maybe you'll have hired someone new to join in, or maybe you won't, because actually you start to find that I really don't need loads and loads of workers to do what I need to do. And it's quite expensive to train new workers. And there's not much more to it than that. It's fairly unremarkable, I think, in the sort of grand scheme of great design. It scales really well from 2 to 6 players, which again, for a Euro game, very difficult to get that kind of player count and work really well, and it does. But the theme really gets me. I really enjoy it. I like the simple pleasure. We've talked before, you much prefer some fantasy or some space stuff. And I like getting my hands dirty and growing some grapes and, selling some wine. It's kind of sedate. It's kind of relaxing. And yet it's a chunky, piecey, nice worker placement game as well. It also has grande workers. That's probably the main thing that sets it out from other things. That is one specialized worker that everyone has that says if someone's gone to a space you want, you can put him then as well. But you can only use him once throughout the year. And so you always feel like you've just got that little get out of jail free card, more Monopoly references. But you have to use him wisely. But yeah, I think it's just great. Viticulture.
My number 4 has had a massive fall from grace because it's now number 4. This was a number 1 game until incredibly recently. I don't have a box that you would buy for it. I have 2 of the little collector boxes now. If you can just about read that, that's Keyforge. This is still the most exciting card game I've come across to satisfy my collectible card game bent. Mm-hmm. This was my number 1 for the last year, 2 years or so. Are you now pondering what my number 1 is?
No, I was just seeing where this came for me, and 108.
Okay. Yeah. I grew up on this stuff, and this just is incredible meta. So this is a unique deck game where every single deck that has ever existed and will ever exist is fundamentally different from, well, not fundamentally, probably the other way.
Marginally different.
Marginally different, but unique. There's like a huge pool of cards that can exist in now 7 different houses, and each deck has 3 of those houses and 12 cards from each pool from that house, and they've added new stuff as sets have come out. And so immediately I'm hooked. Immediately that Dice Masters, that Yu-Gi-Oh, that Pokemon urge to just buy stuff and just try out all these decks. Now, I did that with the first set that came out to quite some degree. Not compared to some people. Some people would buy like boxes of 10 at a time. I think over the year, I probably bought about 10 to 15 from the first set after the starter set. After the starter box, sorry, just to mash it up, see how it goes, what have you. I did a tournament because some
won stuff.
I did. I won metal components, metal keys. I don't play with them because I want 2 sets because I want it to look the same. And so the whole idea of the game fascinates me. I love sitting down, even just by myself, setting up 2 decks and going, let's see what happens. And I'll play both hands because I'm more interested in the meta of the game than the game. But I love the game. It solves some of the magic issues. It solves some of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Pokemon issues. You don't have to have, it's not a resource game in terms of building up your mana to be able to trigger big things, and you've constructed a smarter deck because you're not constructing a deck because it's already done for you. The only resource is about production to forge keys. That's what it is. It's a production race. And so all of the thinking now is in the which house do I play? Because you can play as much as you like from 1 house per turn. Whoa, suddenly that core consideration is fun and fascinating. And I think probably the only thing that you particularly enjoyed about it, because the rest of it is my typical fantasy mix, weird art stuff mashed together.
I think the whole design is just incredible. How can they have thousands of independently different decks of cards, and every single one is made? I mean, even just the cost of manufacturing the thing, you're like, how did they do this? I think it's amazing. You just don't really enjoy playing the game at all.
Sure. And the meta for me has died down. That's why it's dropped to number 4, partly because I'm super hot on a couple of games, and partly just through circumstance. I'm not with my group, so I don't have the opportunity to just, hey, do this. And no one around me really picked it up like I did. So yes, when stores open again, maybe I'll do tournaments again, and maybe that will be the thing that reignites it for me. Other stuff has just put it out of its place. I'm cooler on the meta. I love the gameplay, I really do. It's still number 4 Keyforge.
Pretty good.
My favorite 2-player only game.
Yes. Okay, my number 3 is Wingspan. Number 3. And I'm a bit surprised by that. You heard Dee talk about this, what, in the 40s? 53. 50s, I think you made a big point about it, 53. Because you and I got it at the same time. And actually, we both had the same sorts of reservations about it, in that it's kind of works. It's kind of fun to develop an engine, but there's quite a lot of swingy luck in it, and it sort of peters out towards the end of the game. And the difference was, you got rid of your copy and I kept my copy. Now, that said, my copy was out on loan for, I think, 7 months, and I didn't miss it, which is saying something. And I broke my rule, which is normally that if a game needs expansions to fix it, I don't want to play the game. I don't think Wingspan was broken to begin with. That's maybe one slight difference. It wasn't broken. It just didn't really do it for me. Here's the thing. It kept my interest. It kept my heart because I like birds. Just I was walking in the woods today, and there's a wagtail, and I saw a turtle dove the other day, and I enjoy looking at birds. And so then when they brought out the European expansion with lots of birds that I know and love, I was like, yeah, cool, I'm going to get that. I'm going to see how it mixes in. And yes, it's got 80. I mean, this is the thing. There's 160 in the base game. There's a 10-card promo. There's 80 in the expansion. There's now another 90 in the latest expansion. There are 350 cards, all individual birds, all individual art, all individual mechanics. It is bonkers how much production is in this. I haven't got into how good this game looks, because obviously it does. If you don't know anything about Wingspan, look it up. It's an outstanding piece of production. But the stuff they did with the European expansion, just shifting it away from some of the issues that they had before, developing some player interaction, bringing in some end of round stuff, making stuff that's not all about eggs. The tiny tweaks that just made me go, oh, I now really, really like this game. And it shot from I probably would say it had been in my 30s all the way into my 10s. And then slowly has climbed and climbed and climbed. And we have played it, and you can teach it to anyone. It won Kenner Spiel last year, and yet isn't really complicated to get your head round. But yes, this game has just got better and better and better for me. So I would say Wingspan, and certainly with the European expansion. Number 3.
Okay. My number 3 does not have that issue, because it comes with about 3 expansions in the base box. Now, normally, that's not a thing that appeals to me, because you go, well, what? Just tell me how to play the game. Oh. This is a game I would struggle to get you to play. It has the artwork style you don't like. It has a theme you don't like. It has a theme I'm not fussed by. But the core Euro-y action system is incredible. Incredible. I mean, it's almost the opposite of not virtual resources, because there's not a track, but then you're not gaining resources either. You place your cubes, because it's just cubes, it's a Euro, onto the locations that signify a resource. And so the number of your cubes in that location, say that's how many of that you have, but they aren't physical resources. They are characteristics, they're attributes, because you are a wretched scumbag. That's what the game calls you to begin with. And you've washed up on this island, and you get one companion to try and help you to kind of redeem your name and to become vindicated in vindication. it's the wrong word. Redeemed is probably the correct word. It should be called redemption. I think I found one nuanced definition of vindication which just about fits, but largely no. It's just a cooler name than redemption. But yeah, so there's like wisdom and insight and courage and strength and all this stuff. But it's yellow, it's green, it's whatever. And there are 3 primary ones that are red, blue, and yellow. And then you can also then combine those. And if you read the names, I don't have them to hand right now because the contents are all over there. They make sense. Those 2 things would kind of amount to that thing. That does make sense. Okay. Like wisdom and strength make courage, I think. And you go, yeah, I buy that.
Just about.
Yeah. And it's yellow and red, which make orange. And so it works in
orange courage.
Orange courage. And then this board, it's kind
of what our name should be.
Orange courage. That's like a horrible beer.
Or Dutch football fans.
Yes. After a beer. I've got my orange courage from Orange Courage. The board is kind of an empty sandbox, and you discover tiles. There's an exploration element, and on your turn you have to move. You have to activate, there you go, either yourself, who to begin with only gains 1 of these basic resources, or one of your companions, which give you 2 of something, and they have a special power, so if you activate them you get something else. And you have to either visit or rest, because you start with potential, which you want to become influence, which can then become conviction, which is like this Uber thing. And this potential is doing nothing. It's just sat there. It's waste of time, but it's like 8 cubes. It's 8 potential actions that you can take. And so you have to convert those to influence to be able to do this stuff. And when you've done those and got some points, you then flip over and become vindicated, and you are better. And it's so there's redeemed. There's engine building, there's area control, there's set collection with the different things that you can do, because each resource type, or 6 of them, links to a type of thing that you go do or go buy, like finding artifacts, fighting monsters, gaining self-improvement. You gain traits that make you better, or going to the inn and finding companions. Then in the box there's a monuments expansion where you get to build these giant things, but they take up loads of your cubes until they're done, but then they're worth a buttload of points. So do you invest in that, or do you just, there's just all this stuff. And then they did the brilliant thing. Just here is a little expansion which has a nice extra module, which is pretty good. And then 2 solo modes, 2, not just 1, 2, one very Euro-y, one very adventure-y, Ameritrashy. And so if you, depending on what part of the game you like, you've got 2 ways of playing that you just go, oh, and you could probably play it multiplayer with certainly the first one, the Euro-y one. From what I've done, you could play that 2 or 3 player probably, and then this production's amazing. But the end game, as the game progresses, more and more possible end game triggers come out. So it's just this fascinating. It's like once everybody's vindicated, or when one more than number of player of monsters has been collected, or when somebody has a card of each color, and it just, as it goes out, and it could just suddenly end, because it's not a Euro. It is a Euro. It's completely a Euro, but it's not, because it's this story of what you've been doing on this island. And of course it could just end. That could be the end of the tale, because we've achieved what we wanted to achieve, and you've just got to be ready for all of that stuff. I think you would enjoy it in spite of the fact of all the things that you would hate about it.
I sat down and went to play this with my game group, and then someone else was setting up Root and needed an extra player, and thankfully I managed to get someone to sub me in so I didn't have to play Vindication, because everything I've said about Root, just the way it looks, the way it feels, is the total opposite of Vindication. I'm like, I don't want to play this game. This is not for me. I'm sure mechanically I'd be up for it, but just the look and feel, see you later. It's just not going to happen. But I can appreciate some of the design things.
And the production's insane.
I have just clocked that we're up to our last 2. And I know what your last 2 are, but I'm very curious to see which way around they are.
I thought you might be.
Okay, my number 2 then has no box because I don't own it anymore.
Cheat.
Pandemic Legacy Season 1. It almost doesn't make the list because it doesn't exist anymore, because it's a one-time playthrough. It's Pandemic. We've talked about it a lot. And if you don't know how the legacy thing works, basically they change the rules 12 times over 12 months as it is. Almost like real life. You know, in March, suddenly something bad happens and we're paying for it for a whole year. And then suddenly, and you know, month 10, they start to get vaccinations. It's startlingly close. I talked about Pandemic Legacy Season 2 earlier, and we've talked about a couple of other legacy games. It's very difficult to talk about without giving any spoilers. This nearly made number 1. This is so nearly one. If you look at my BGG rating, my Board Game Geek rating, this and my number 1 are the only two that have the same score. They are both 10 out of 10, because this is comfortably the best gaming experience we've ever had, me and my wife. And there are things that happen in May and in September. And when other people are playing it through, I'm like, oh, where are you up to? They're like, oh, May. And I'm like, tough, innit? And they're like, yeah. I was like, yeah, we lost twice. Or like, someone's just finished August. And I'm like, you get in September. And I said, Cheryl, like, I'm up to September. She's like, oh, so much. Stuff happens. You name characters. You tear cards up. People get scars. People develop relationships. There's just, and I'm not, you know, the gamers, but the characters in the thing. Cheryl and I already have a relationship, but it's so good. It's probably the closest I'll ever get to playing a role-playing game. And underneath all of that, you've got a Pandemic game, which we know is a solid game. And there is stuff in there that I like better than Pandemic. When you've played it, though, it's finished. And you could say, oh, that's quite expensive for what it is. It's 50, 60, 70 quid, depending on where you get it. But you will play at least 12 and probably around 18 games. If you do the maths, it's about £5 a time, if that. And, you know, what can you do for a fiver with 4 of your mates? Not a lot. You can't even get a round of drinks in. You can't even go to the bar at the moment. But, you know, it's so good. It's so good. And there are so many games, actually, that I don't know that I've even ever played 12, 18 times. And yet they're very high on my list. This is something special.
My top 3 were incredibly easy to choose and to organize. My number 2, creates the statistic that says that the West Kingdom is my favorite trilogy. My number 2 game of all time is Paladins of the West Kingdom. Now, this is a game I should not like. This is a game I spent a year going, nah, I'm good. I'm good. I played Architects and been like, this is great. This is cool. I heard and watched and read everything about Paladins and went, no, I'm not going to like that at all. Where's the fun gone? Where's the interaction? Where's the theme? Where's all the stuff that made Architects great? This is just worker placement. It's the best worker placement. This twist is so good. It's color. The twist is color. How does that even work? And you don't own workers until the beginning of a round where the little market, whatever it's called, comes out and you choose a card that has 4 workers on and you draft those cards. That's my starting points. And then, as Rick said, oh boy, you draw 3 paladins. You keep one,
good.
You put one on top, you put one on the bottom. You might see them again if it's early rounds. You probably won't. Oh, build your strategy. Go. What? Okay. There's the left side of the board, which has kind of the basic normal actions. And then there's the right side of the board, which is all like the 6 core, this is how you get points actions. Which ones do I do? How do I do them? Okay. Well, the colors loop round because there's 3 scoring types in red, blue, and black. I'm sure it's strength, faith, and influence, I think. Yes. But every right-hand action utilizes one and then feeds you another. So commissioning your priests to go out and spread the word requires faith, but gives you influence, or whichever way around it is. I've probably got that wrong.
Yeah.
And everything happens like that. If you want to go out and conquer the world, that's one thing. But then if you want to build like fortifications, that's another. Or if you want to go conquer local peoples and make them join you, that's another thing. Or if you want to grow your town and build your court, that's another thing. And it's just, oh boy.
Even the thing is, even hearing you talking about it, I feel bored. Like,
right?
I'm like, it's not that interesting a theme, and yet it's your number 2, it's my number 13. It is so flipping clever and just mind-bending and fun.
I mentioned last time before, whenever I was speaking about Viscounts, the Viscounts is the smoothest solo implementation that I've ever come across. Paladins isn't as good solo, and yet is so much a better game that I will sit and play this for an hour. I think my first game was 2 hours with all the setup, all the teardown, all the thinking that I have to do for the other person and figuring out, because it's complex. This is a complex game. It's a deep game. It might take me 2 hours and I'll set it up and do it again. Wow. I will just go, oh, that was so satisfying. It simplifies. It's just complex. Like, I could probably teach it better now than I found learning it.
Yeah, sure.
English, whatever. Because actually, the concepts are quite simple. There's just a few little niggly things that you just need to figure out and whatever. And so having somebody lead you through that, I think you'd find it a much more pleasant experience.
Yeah, I agree.
Amico, Shem Phillips, SJ McDonald's. That's the single greatest worker placement game, the best game of 2019. Screw you, Wingspan. It shouldn't be as good as it is. It should, but like I really didn't think I'd like it. I
number 2
flipping love this game. It could be my number 1, but we'll get to why it's not later. All right, you have your turn.
Number 1. You're 96. 96. Terraforming Mars. In which you terraform Mars.
Only if you remember.
That's how the game ends. When you heat the planet up to a balmy 8 degrees, when there's enough oxygen to breathe and there's enough water coverage that we can live. This is another one actually that I didn't love straight away, but that's partly because we played the rule wrong, which is always a terrible thing to do, because you go, oh, that's a bit silly and I don't really, there's no sort of crunchiness to it. We were wrong. It's great. You talked before about the slightly ropey production. They haven't quite fixed on an art style. It doesn't actually bother me as much as it bothers some, because what I think it does really well is it blends theme and action, because you are building things in millions of dollars in 400 years time. That's the setting. And when you've built them, they do something that seems appropriate. You know, you build a biome for people to live in. Okay, you get money because people were happy and spending money in your world. You grow some plants. They make oxygen because that's what plants do. You know, you do some mining, and the outworking of that is actually oxygen as well, because, you know, reactions and stuff. It shows that this is designed by a science teacher. Every bit of the science measures up. When the planet heats up to a certain level, the heat goes up because the carbon gases start melting and start creating global warming. And you're like, great. There's a really solid, economic game going under here. How much am I producing of something? How much do I spend of stuff? It's a real cube pusher. And when I teach people this game, and I have taught a lot of people this game, I tell them about Terraform Mars. I tell them about all the things. And then I give them their cards. And they look at their cards and they're absolutely bamboozled by the choice and the array, and they don't really understand what's going on. And then they maybe do 1 or 2 things. They get through their first round and they get to their second round and they're offered 4 more cards they can buy. And they're like, I don't know what I would do with these. I'd throw them away. And then, because I'm still trying to focus on these cards, because it's an engine builder, and you get one type of card that improves your chances to play another type of card, and that one will score points and blah, 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 blah. And then by the third or fourth time round of getting 4 more cards they buy, they suddenly shift from, I don't know why would I want any of these, to suddenly, I want all of these. And they want them because the theme is good. Because they're like, yes, I want cows to come and live on Mars. Yeah, that sounds like a wonderful, yes, get me some insects. That would be great. And because they go, oh, and what that would do is when I play it with this, and I've put that in place, and when that happens, and this thing, oh, they work together, don't they? And I go, yes, they do. They work together. The whole thing is just, for me, it's, I struggle to talk about it. It's the most interrelated game I know, because it's just resource management. It really, if you take it down to brass tacks, take away all the, paraphernalia around it, it's like, can I push this cube up to pull that cube down to make some more of those cubes to send them on that cubes? That's quite dull, but they interrelate, and the theme ties them together in a way that I don't see in any other game. I don't think it's done anywhere as well anywhere else. Shall we reveal what my number 6 was?
Your number 6. My number 1. Nuts.
Yeah.
I would show you the big box, but the laptop is sat on it. That's how much of this game I have. I have the legendary box, which is twice the height of this. It is the same size, which is big already, but it's twice.
I actually have more of this game than you do, but
correct. No, you don't.
2 boxes. Yes,
we have an equivalent amount.
Oh yeah.
Because we both have all of the expansions. Yes. You have metal coins,
I do.
And I have a neoprene mat.
Oh yeah.
You will have more than me, but you don't. No. I love this game. Why do you tell us about the game?
This is one that my wife and I struggled to get hold of for a little while. Not get hold of, it was available, but this look is not really our bag. War, moody Europeans, grumpy about farming. I don't know. Like, think about Wingspan. Yeah, beautiful light colors. No, what's this? Some sort of war bear?
Yes.
What's going? Who's this? I didn't know. No, thank you. And then you have miniatures. And I'm like, I don't really care for miniatures. I'm not a miniature gamer. And they're going to war and they're fighting each other. I don't want to fight. I'm not a war gamer. I'm not a miniature gamer. This is daft. What are you? Ugh, come on. And then you teach us. And I'm like, okay, fine. I probably should give it a go. I probably shouldn't judge a book by its moody cover. It's not a war game at all, is it?
Nope. It's a farming game. You love farming games.
Scythe. The word is scythe. It's scythe. It's like cutting down wheat. It's not like the Grim Reaper. It's scythe. It's a farming game. It's post 1920s in a fictitious version where there was some war in Europe, maybe, and the countries are trying to rebuild themselves after that war. I can see that happening. And there's this Cold War aspect to it. There's saber rattling. These mechs, really, they're used for moving people around and stuff like that. And they're just a super, super solid Euro engine building game. And it's brilliantly simple. Same design team as Viticulture, same publisher as Wingspan. And Wingspan does the same thing. You have 4 actions available to you. Just 4. I say just because Pandemic, one of the most universally played games, has 8. Wow. Okay, this is 4. You either move some stuff, buy some stuff, produce some stuff, or something else.
Bolster.
That's the one. Yeah.
Gain bigger power. Yeah.
Yeah. That's it. And you do that by moving a token around. And the only thing is you can't do what you did last time because you have to move your token. Okay. Now, if you've got enough resources, you could potentially do something on the bottom, which is build a building, build a mech, recruit someone else, or make the other things better. Because what happens is that last one, the upgrade, you take the things that were making your top actions not as powerful, and you make your bottom things cheaper. This is really hard to get your head around. But basically, you get better at everything.
Yeah.
And so these 4 actions, they stay the same 4 actions, but they get both easier to do and more powerful. And the sense of scope, the sense of progression, the sense of completion is brilliant.
So it's your 6 because it's an amazing game. It's my number 1 for a few reasons. 1, it's an amazing game. 2, amazing production. But this was kind of my first large game. Once I got into the hobby, I probably got it almost a little too early by what you would imagine as a normal progression in games. At a similar time to you getting Terraforming Mars, I think. But I'd looked at it, and we'd kind of
at the time we had a kind of Betamax VHS rivalry. Yes,
we're very much going after slightly different things, and this was what I felt I was looking for in a game, and I got it. And I think we were at a niece's birthday, and I brought the rule book just to show you, just to read, just to go, this sounds amazing. I haven't even played it yet.
Ain't a page turner, I tell you.
No, it's not, but it's beautiful. And then I went back and played it and played it and played it and played it at 1, played it at 2, played it at 3, played it at 4, played it at 5, got the expansion, played it at 6. I haven't played it at 7, will never do so. No, thank you. I will now no longer ever play one player. I'll play digital because the digital version is really good. But obviously I prefer physical components. But the solo is a little bit too much upkeep, regardless of what I said about paladins. That's the one exception. Quite a bit of upkeep. But that simple choice Rick was talking about of choose one of your 4 things, do that. That's it. If you're learning the game, which one did I do? Do a different one.
Do something else.
Just to see what happens.
Even the player aids say that. Just look at what everyone else has done. Do something else. Now maybe start to work towards this. It's a helpful sort of the first 5 turns mapped out for you.
And because you start on a little island and you can't really go anywhere, it helps teach you the game as you play it until you've done enough stuff to be able to afford to get the stuff to move off. And it's just really good. And then every faction has a rule-breaking ability, which suits a different style of play. If you're new, give them Rusviet. You get to repeat the action. Whereas Rick said the rule normally you can't do the action you did last time, Rusviets you can. If you're combative, play Saxony. You get to get as many stars as you like from fighting people. My personal favorite is Polania, which is those encounter cards. You get to choose 2 of the outcomes instead of 1. Beautiful. All this other Crimea, you get to use combat cards instead of resources. So you can do the Cold War thing of building up what looks like you're going to be really effective in battle, but actually I'm going to use those to fund other things. To go farming. The Nordic people, I've forgotten their names.
They go swimming.
They can go swimming. And the workers can get off their island straight away, and you can start building that way. And then there's all this... there's so much depth to what is essentially a very simple game. Now there are chess-minded people, by which I mean you can study this. There are now forbidden combinations of factions and player boards because they're broken. And I think when I taught you, I actually gave you one of the broken.
You can say that. I beat you. That you get over.
Yeah. You battered me. Absolutely. But I think it came last. Yeah. And then there's this thing that comes out that's saying, "Oh, don't put the Rusviets with this thing." And I was like, "That's what Rick had." I'm not terrible. I am. I'm not great at this game. He's good. So the amount of time I've had it, the amount of plays I've had out of it, to then as it was dipping and Keyforge kind of took over, then we got Rise of Fenris, the campaign, played through the campaign. Everything now is in this big box under here. I will never say no to this game. I will never say no to this game in any format, in any player count, bar 7. Even then, I probably would. If you've got a big enough, table, I'll say, let me roll out my mat because it's slightly bigger than the base board.
Do you have the extended board?
I do have the extended board.
Oh, fine. We're still at the same level.
Yeah. But the mat is just better. It's just better. It's everything about this game is beautiful. It's not perfect. Everybody finds flaws because they study stuff because no one wants anything to be fun anymore. It's just fun, and it's great. It's my number 1. That is 100 games. Well, that is actually 155, over 150 games. I did the maths in between the last couple of videos, and I think we had 43, 46, I can't remember, number of crossovers. So we've still spoken about so many, and within each game we've mentioned loads of others. So it's nearly 200
so like we talk
games.
about Ticket to Rides, we've got like
There's
5 base game Ticket to Rides, let alone talking about all the expansions in there. And so yeah, there must be going on 170 plus.
Yeah. So if you've watched all of these, thank you for sticking with us. But hopefully, out of all the myriad of games, you've heard something you like. You've seen pictures of things you like. That's what this channel is about. I like inviting people into what we love and giving you the kind of information you might want to go further in and explore it for yourself. If you do subscribe, you'll get to see all the things we do. I try and do reviews. I try and talk about design and mechanisms and all those kinds of things. So do search through other videos. In the meantime, do follow me on social media. Just search Winsome Loose, more unusual platforms. You'll find me. Rick, it's been an absolute joy. Maybe next time. Yeah, hopefully we'll get our other brother to do his top 10 at some point. I'm predicting ice cool
at 1 and ice cool 2 at 2.
Yeah, probably. But that's it. That's our 100 over. All done. I keep rambling. I'll stop. Thank you. Bye.